What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where today, yes, you're seeing it right, we have the all-new 2022 Honda Civic. And not just any Civic, this is the Civic Touring, the best of the best outside of the SI and the Type R that you can get in the Civic family. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, this thing has a lot of hype to live up to. I've been waiting to drive this car ever since I first saw it in the renderings. Before it ever hit production, before it ever hit the auto shows, I was waiting to get my hands on this thing. And it definitely stirred my wallet a little bit too, because this touring model that I'm sitting in here comes just under $30,000, which is a lot, I know, but considering all that you get and the driving experience that comes with it, well, I'm pretty sure by the end of this, some of you might think it's very well worth it. And on that note, let's hit the start button and get this thing on the road, shall we? Yes, the humble Honda Civic. Oh, how Americans have adored this thing over and over since it first landed here on US soil back in 1973. But now, here for 2022, we are looking at the Civic's 11th generation of existence. And I'm telling you, it has grown in leaps and bounds in its entire production career. Now, I can't go over all of that. If you want to talk about that, talk to Honda Pro Jason. He'll definitely give you more of a heads up. But as far as where I'm sitting, this is one of the best Civics that I've ever gotten to know. First of all, the way this thing drives is it's defined yet focused. And that's not some words that I normally would use, but it just feels so light on its feet. And this car weighs over 3,000 pounds as this one sits here. The other thing I've really noticed is, aside from a good bit of road noise in here with the slightly lower profile tires in this touring model, what I've noticed is that it's very direct. It's not a Civic Si, at least this one's not. I'm kind of waiting on that one to drive here pretty soon. But overall, it feels very confidence-inspiring. Feels like you could actually drive this thing and have some serious fun with it. Now, speaking of fun, is it very fast? That depends on your version of fast, because we only have 1.5 liters, a turbocharger, direct injection, and 4 cylinders mated to what Honda calls the LLCVT. Well, that was actually quite surprising, because you definitely feel the lag in the CVT. There's not a whole lot of turbo lag to speak of, but you really feel like the car's kind of struggling a little bit to get up to speed. But then again, that's never been the point of the Civic. If you want a Civic hot rod, go with an SI or a Type R. But if you really want just something that's a good daily driver, it can pass other cars with ease, and you just don't need all the horsepower in the world, this is still a great example of that. One of the other things I have noticed about the Civic is that the ride is a little bit on the firm side. We have the typical McPherson strut suspension in front, multi-link out back, and while the steering itself is actually quite nice, I've noticed that the ride can be a little bit on the firm side. Now, I can't speak for the other 3 trim levels in the Civic line right now, but as far as the touring is concerned, if you are looking for a little bit more of a softer, kind of just more relaxed feeling Civic, I would say go for one with thicker tires on it. The thinner tires on this, like I said, do generate a bit of road noise. That said, from where I'm sitting though, the seats are incredibly comfortable. Although there is one small thing that I must bring up, which is I only have an 8-way power adjustable driver's seat on this side, and even worse, I have a 4-way power adjustable passenger seat over here, and neither of them come with lumbar support. That is a big must-have for me. I don't care what type of car I'm driving. I'm 32 years old and I already have a bit of a bad back. So having some lumbar support, especially in a smaller car like this, would pay some dividends for me. That said, also from where I'm sitting, I actually have a surprising amount of leg room up here. I'm over 6 feet tall, and normally getting into cars like this is not the most comforting experience. But from where I'm sitting, I can move my legs back and forth without a single issue, and I don't see any reason why I couldn't take this car on a road trip. Now, most of you guys may or may not believe me, but I've spent just as much time looking at this new Civic as I have driving it. By far and away, this is my favorite Civic that has ever existed. And I know you fanboys out there are saying, well, what about the SI? Well, what about the Type R? Well, hold your horses, guys, because I'm specifically speaking about just the regular Civic in general. And first of all, I think this is one of the only cars where I actually would buy it in silver. This lunar silver metallic actually really fits this car's profile, and combined with the touring trim, I think it just ups the ante even more. Now, like I said, Honda calls this design sporty yet simplistic, and you can look at it here in the front, and we have things like the full LED headlights, so we have the LED turn signals and daytime running lights across the top. This does have auto high beam assist, so they are auto on off, but other than that, it's a very simplistic design. And call me wrong, but just looking at the front at a slight glance, does anybody see just a very slight whiff of maybe a CB9 Accord from back in the late 80s and 90s? I don't know, that was just something that kind of came to mind when I saw it. But you look down below, you've got LED fog lights, we've got the front half of the park assist here that also translates to the rear. We've got a beautiful skinny little grille here in the front, which I like this lower hood. Honda has lowered the hood down a little bit for this new design, and I really kind of like this lip here on the front. Of course, you have a giant mouth underneath feeding all the air into that turbocharged engine. And then of course, behind all of this, we have the Honda Sensing Active Safety Suite. So you get a lot of generic stuff like the adaptive radar cruise control, forward collision warning, lane departure warning, and lane keep assist, collision mitigation braking, and so on. But you also get some really nice stuff like road sign recognition and traffic jam assist. Now, although the Civic is classified as a compact sedan, it really doesn't look it. This car is just under 1.5 inches longer than the outgoing Civic and just over a 1/2 inch wider. Now, in terms of size, one of the things that really this car benefits from are these. Now, these are specific only to the touring, but they are 18-inch machine-faced and shark gray painted aluminum alloy wheels. They're wrapped in 235/40 series Goodyear tires. And I gotta tell you guys, out of all the rims that the Civic offers, I love these the best. Again, I've gone over certain topics about wheels perhaps looking a little too busy, but I think these are just right for this new Civic's design. And then of course, you can see right behind it, we have ventilated disc brakes in all 4 corners. Now, at just over $30,000, the Civic comes pretty well equipped when you fully load it out like this. You come down the side here, you have body-colored side view mirrors with the LED turn signal. Neither of these have a camera under them, so they don't have that Honda lane sense camera like you might have seen in prior models, which is kind of nice because to me, on the old Civic, I think that was a little bit annoying. I wasn't really a fan of it, nor did I ever really use it when I drove one. They do have blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert. That's always a nice thing to have. Up top, you have a standard size power tilting and sliding sunroof, and of course you've got the Ace body structure surrounding all of that, which is nice. So the more body structure you have, the safer and stronger the vehicle is going to be. And then of course we get to the advanced keyless access system. Now, Honda just calls this a smart access, but it does all the same functions with one nice little extra with the remote start. But you also have the regular features like lock, unlock, release the trunk, panic, and the releasable key blade out of the bottom, which can be used to unlock the door if either the vehicle or this key fob loses power. And before we get into the vehicle, I actually really like this key fob. It's small, it's pocket sized, it's really easy to use. But speaking of pocket, that's really where you need to keep the key if you want to lock or unlock the vehicle. You can put it in your purse, handbag, etc. But to unlock the car, like always, you just grab the handle, you hear it beeps when you want to unlock it. And if you want to lock it, you can either walk away and have it lock itself, or you can touch these little ridges on the side of the handle. Now, if you want to talk about the Civic's most photogenic angle, then take a look at this car from the back. I know I said the front has a very sporty appearance, but I see a little bit more of a new gen Accord that's been sort of melted down and shrunk here in the back. And I know I'm not the only person to say that, but I really love the look of it back here. The taillights are nice and large. They're mostly LED, not all of it. So the main bulbs are LED. I know the turn signals are incandescent, and I believe the reversing lights are incandescent as well. I love the nice tool touring badge up here as well. Adds a nice little bit of class. You see the rear half of the park assist with the sensors going along the lower half of the bumper. Now, one thing that's very interesting is unless you get a very sporty Civic, you will not see any kind of high-end exhaust finishers. I believe on the Civic Sport you can get those, but here on the touring, they're hidden up underneath. So you're not going to get any kind of raucous or ricery noise out of this Honda. Now, just like a lot of its competition, even though the Civic is quite small in terms of its overall size in today's industry, it is still a very practical vehicle nonetheless. Now, to open the trunk, you can use the trunk latch on the trunk itself, or you can simply use the key fob as I have here. The trunk rises up almost like a power trunk. It has a little bit of resistance to it when it opens itself, but then you look in the back, and for some unknown reason, the Touring has a slightly smaller trunk than its three other siblings. If you look at an LX, a Sport, or an EX, you're looking at 14.8 cubic feet, but for the Touring, it's 14.4 cubic feet. Not quite sure what that or why that is, but it definitely looks very spacious. You've got a 60-40 split fold seat in the back, so you got the little tabs up here on top. And I've had quite a lot of stuff in here, especially this being just after Christmas time. I have had quite a few presents here in the back of the Civic, and they fit every single one of them with ease. So if you're looking for a small car that's still practical, the Civic still has you covered. Now, I'm not gonna lie, as much as I love looking at the outside of the Civic with its simple yet sporty exterior, you take a look inside this car, and yet again, we have another very descriptive Honda term for this, known as man maximum and machine minimum. And just look in here. I keep going back to it. It really looks like a baby Honda Accord. And look at this, we've got leather seats in here, which are heated but not cooled, and I'm very disappointed by that, because not only for the price point would I expect that option to be included, but also competition like the Volkswagen Jetta and the Hyundai Elantra / Kia Forte all have cooled seats either as standard or as a part of the options list. So I was kind of expecting that in here, but just look at this. I mean, I love the design of the dash. Everything from the leather trim steering wheel with the paddle shifters on the back. That's the only way you can control the manual mode in this car. You have the manual tilt and telescoping steering column, and you even have some nice little buttons down here, like for the Honda sensing system, the front and rear park assist, and the traction control. And then over here on the door, you have all your simple switchgear, including both automatic front windows. From behind the wheel, the first thing you notice about the Civic is just how airy it feels in here. I was mentioning it earlier, but the visibility in here is just insane. Look at the size of that windshield to start with. The lower belt line on the windows really gives you some great access from the side. And even the windshield out the back isn't that bad. But you look here just in front of the driver. I mentioned the steering wheel already. I love the grips up top and how soft the leather feels. Of course, it is festooned with all the buttons you could expect. Everything over here on the right is for your adaptive cruise control, minus the scroll wheel. That controls the right-hand side of the 10.2-inch liquid crystal display for your gauge cluster. Same thing with the left side. All of these are your radio functions and voice recognition, minus the little scroll wheel, which controls the information in the left-hand side of the gauge cluster. Everything else is very straightforward. I love the paddles on the back. They're nice and small, got a nice little grip on the back of them, even though they're mainly just plastic. There's no rubber on them, but they feel very nice and sharp. So when you actually pull one, you feel like you're actually accomplishing something. It doesn't feel kind of limp-wristed or lackluster. Now, in what seems to be a reoccurring theme with cars of this size, and a lot of bigger cars for that matter, the Civic's infotainment system is perched right up on top of the dash, again in a very tablet-like fixture. Now, when I first saw systems like this, I kind of thought they were a little bit, I don't know, gimmicky. Some of them kind of looked like an iPad that was just glued to the top of the dash, but this I really like because the screen is just right for its size. For the Touring model here, it's a 9-inch screen, full touch screen, and a very high resolution, but also it is right in your line of sight as you're driving. And if you're a little bit taller like me, you might have to look down just a hair, but overall, very effective system to use, and the touch feedback is actually really nice. We have things like Honda's newest satellite guided navigation system, which the feedback is okay, and honestly I think it's one of the better looking GPS systems that I've actually used in a compact car like this. Now, it does have all the usual suspects like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, but in the Touring model here, those features are wireless. If you go with something lesser like an LX, a Sport, or an EX, those all have to be wired in, but the Touring specifically gets the wireless convenience for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay lovers. doors. Now, what I love about this is that although the system can be a little bit glitchy, I have noticed that, I actually prefer to use this more than the factory system itself. But aside from the backup camera, which is pretty decently nice. I mean, it does its job as you would expect. You have the front and rear park assist, as I talked about before. You have the top-down view, so an adjustable camera to say the least, and it does its job as you would expect. This touring model comes with a 12-speaker Bose premium audio system, and I'm gonna be honest, I've heard a lot of name brand systems out there, but this one doesn't seem to sound the best. It almost sounds a little too hollow for my liking, and that's with the bass turned all the way up, and also with the sound system adjusted to my liking. But I'll go ahead and just push the power button here and see what y'all think about it. But as much as I love bigger details like the infotainment and the larger sound system in here, I also love little things in this Civic, like this full metal grate that comprises all your air vents here in the middle of the dash. Instead of these big plastic vents being pasted all over everything, I love how they've just integrated it into one seamless big vent cavity just in the middle. Now, it does have just the little individual vents hidden inside. It's not all one big thing, but I just love little details like that. Look at these controls. I love this. It looks like something you'd find on an airliner. I just think that's great. So you have two USBs here. The one on the right is specifically for charging only. The one on the left can be used to activate Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. However, as I said before, it is wireless, so that is always a nice thing. But down below, speaking of wireless, we have a wireless charger down here that is also standard here on the touring model, which I really, really like. And it seems to work a lot better than a lot of other wireless chargers that I've used in the past. It actually seems to kind of look past the fact that my phone has a giant case on it, and it does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's charged my phone without really an issue, and it doesn't actually generate that much heat in the same process. Now, like most small cars, if you want to carry someone else with you and you think you need a bigger vehicle, well, sometimes that's where the surprises come in. And you look in the back of the Civic and you actually have quite a decent size amount of room back here. You've got a nice little armrest right here in the center, so it folds right down with two nice little cup holders in the center. But keeping in mind, that driver's seat is exactly where I would have it if I'm driving this vehicle, and I get in the back. Again, keeping in mind I'm over 6 feet tall, I actually have a somewhat decent size amount of room between my knee and the back of the driver's seat. I've got two USB ports. Those are not USB-Cs. Those are just regular USBs right there, which is nice because not everybody has a USB-C to USB-C cord. I've got one map pocket right here on the back of the passenger seat, and I've got some nice convenient little bottle holders in each of the doors. Now, in terms of headroom, I've actually got quite a decent amount of space back here, so I wouldn't say this is not a road trip car. I mean, yes, it's small, but I still feel like I have not only a commanding view of the road from the back seat, but I still feel actually quite comfortable back here. Now, despite all my woes with the Civic, it is still a very, very solid car. If you're looking for a great fuel-efficient, economy-minded commuter car, or perhaps something that starts as a nice blank canvas if you're an enthusiast like me, this 11th gen Civic is a perfect platform. I have had nothing but praise to say about the fact that it's just very smooth, it's very comfortable. Yes, it's somewhat loud in here, and yes, it's got a CVT, but I really think as an overall package, no matter which of the trims you go with, LX, Sport, EX, or Touring, you're not going to be getting a bad car. Honda has always had such a great reputation with the Civic, and now it continues into its 11th generation. But that wraps it up for today's review. So if you guys enjoyed this video, or perhaps you learned something, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, it will benefit the both of us at the end of it. At the end of the day, though, I have to give a massive thank you to Honda North America for lending us one of their brand new Civics to have some fun with and drive around in for a solid week. But at the end of it, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.